Have you ever noticed that most major unified dynasties in ancient China didn't last more than 300 years? From the first emperor of Qin to Puyi, every founder started their rule by learning from the mistakes of the previous dynasty, hoping their power would last forever. Yet, they all eventually fell into the cycle of rising to greatness and then declining. Is this just fate being unpredictable, or were there unsolvable problems built into the old system? Today, let's look at the rise and fall of 8 major dynasties to solve this 1,000-year-old puzzle. 1. The Qin dynasty. As China's first major unified dynasty, Qin Shi Huang clearly saw the fatal flaw of the Zhou dynasty system of giving land to nobles, which led to powerful regional lords fighting each other. He got rid of that system and set up 36 provinces, where all officials were appointed by the central government. He also standardized writing, card axles, and measurements, keeping power tightly in his hands. This system of provinces and a central administration was very efficient, allowing him to mobilize millions of workers to build the Great Wall and dig canals. But he forgot that the harsh methods used to win a kingdom can't simply be used to rule it. To support this centralized system, taxes and laws were so heavy that people couldn't breathe. There were more men forced into labor than farming. A small mistake could lead to having a hand or foot cut off. Then, Qin Shi Huang died suddenly during a trip east, without clearly naming a public successor. Xiaoko and Li Shi worked together to forge an order, forcing Qin's crown prince Fusu and General Meng Tian to kill themselves. Hu Hai became emperor, and the political foundation began to shake. In 209 BCE, Chen Sheng and Wu Guang were forced to start a rebellion, because heavy rain delayed their work deadline. Their shout, "Our kings and generals born to their titles," became the final straw that broke the Qin's back. Old nobles from the 6 former states joined the rebellion, spreading it nationwide. With Xiang Yu's victory at Julu and Liu Bang entering Xianyang, the Qin Empire, which hoped to last forever, collapsed after only 15 years. The fall of Qin left a warning for later dynasties. Centralization can stabilize a kingdom, but without the people's support, even the strongest power will fall. 2. The Han Dynasty. In 212 BCE, Liu Bang defeated Xiang Yu and became emperor. Founding the Han, he had seen how the Qin's over-centralization led to its quick fall. But he also knew the problems of the Zhou system. He avoided both extremes and created a mixed system. In key areas like the capital region and the central plains, he set up provinces governed by the central government. In distant areas like Yan, Zhao, and Chu, he gave power to his relatives as princes, hoping they would guard the borders and protect the center. This worked well at first, using provinces to keep core areas stable and using the 2 princes to defend against the Xiongnu and manage local areas. But as these princes grew stronger, controlling their own armies and money, they became powerful local rulers who were hard to control. During Emperor Jing's rule, the princes, unhappy with policies reducing their power, started the rebellion of the 7 states. It was put down in just 3 months, but it showed the fatal flaw of the system. Family bonds couldn't withstand the temptation of power. Your own relatives could become a threat to the throne. Emperor Wu later used a clever order to split the princes' lands among their heirs, making each generation weaker, which mostly solved the problem. But a new issue appeared. The empire was huge, and the emperor couldn't manage everything alone, so he had to rely on relatives from the empress's family. In the late Western Han, these relatives grew too powerful. Wang Meng, using his aunt's position as empress, gradually took control and eventually seized the throne in 9 CE, founding the Xin dynasty, ending the Western Han. After Liu Xiu defeated Wang Mang and restored the Han, he got rid of the mixed system, pushed hard for the province system, took back local military and financial power, reduced the power of top officials, promoted scholars, and limited the power of the empress's family, creating a period of revival. But after Liu Xiu, many emperors were children when they took the throne and couldn't rule directly. This power vacuum allowed the empress's relatives and palace officials to rise, leading to a mess of officials fighting and palace officials seizing power. The country was consumed by internal fights. By Emperor Ling's time, to suppress the Yellow Turban Rebellion, military and financial power was given to local governors, who then built their own armies. The Han Empire finally split into the 3 kingdoms. Although the Han lasted over 400 years, it split into Western and Eastern Han because of Wang Mang's takeover. Each stable period was still under 300 years. The Han left a second warning. Balancing power is not a simple choice. When internal fights hollow out the foundation, local control is lost and the dynasty breaks. 3. The Sui dynasty. After over 300 years of war, Emperor Wen of Sui unified China again. He learned from all past mistakes, creating a system with 3 departments and 6 ministries. To to split the prime minister's power and keep checks and balances. He started the imperial exams to break the noble family's hold on official jobs. The system design was nearly perfect, but under Emperor Yang, these efficient systems became tools to exhaust the country's strength. He wanted to build the Grand Canal to connect north and south and attack Goguryeo to show his power. These could have been great long-term projects, but he rushed them. Building the eastern capital used over 2 million workers every month. According to records, eventually even men were not enough, and women had to do the labor. Fields were left empty with no one to farm. After the people's strength was completely used up, peasant rebellions rose like a tide. The once strong Sui dynasty fell after only 38 years. The tragedy of the Sui proves that even a perfect system, if used to recklessly drain the country's strength, will only speed up the collapse. 4. The Tang dynasty. The Tang took the Sui systems and made them better. Exams selected talented people. The 3 departments and 6 ministries managed the government, and they created golden ages, making Tang the richest empire in the world at the time. But the Tang's territory was vast, and the central government found it hard to defend all borders. Emperor Xuanzong set up military governors to hold military power on the frontiers. Later, financial and appointment powers were also given to them, making them like local kings. At first they obeyed, but in 755, the military governor An Lushan rebelled with 150,000 soldiers. The An Lushan rebellion lasted 8 years. It emptied the Tang's strength. The population dropped dramatically, and the economy suffered. Worse, after the rebellion, the military governors ignored the central government. They refused to pay taxes, wouldn't follow orders, and fought each other. Later, Tang emperors were either controlled by these governors or by the palace, officials who commanded the imperial army. The dynasty gradually died from constant internal fights. Its rule stopped at 289 years. Just short of 300, the warning is clear. Don't give too much power to the borders. Once local powers become too strong, they will eventually drag down the dynasty. 5. The Song dynasty. After nearly 100 years of chaos in the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms, Song founder Zhao Guangyin became emperor by being forced to take the throne by his soldiers. As a former military governor himself, he was terrified of generals rebelling. After founding the Song, his first act was to take back his general's power during a banquet. He gathered the best troops in the capital under his direct control. Local officials were watched by others. When armies went to fight, generals didn't have full command. They had to follow orders from the capital. This policy of favoring scholars over military leaders ensured that for over 300 years, no general rebelled, and it led to great economic prosperity. But the cost was a weak military. Generals and soldiers didn't know each other, and armies were disorganized in battle. Border troops were old and weak. They couldn't fight the cavalry of the Liao, Jin, or Mongols. To survive, the Song had to pay them money and grain every year. In the southern Song, they were pushed to the south by the Jin. Finally, under Mongol attacks, a Song minister jumped into the sea with the young emperor. The Song lasted 319 years, one of the few to pass 300 years. But its end shows that weakening defense to prevent internal rebellion only makes the dynasty weak against outside threats. 6. The Yuan dynasty. After the Mongols conquered China and founded the Yuan, they tried to copy Chinese ways of ruling, a central secretariat for the capital and a province system for local areas. This province system was later used by the Ming and Qing, and even influences today's regions, a major contribution from the Yuan. But the Mongol nobles were proud, conquerors at heart, and never saw the Han, Chinese, as equal partners. They created a 4-class system. Mongols were top, then Western and Central Asians, then Northern Chinese, and Southern Chinese at the bottom. The treatment was very unfair. History records that if a Mongol hit a Han person, the Han could not fight back. No matter how talented a Han person was, they could rarely get a high position. Heavy taxes made life hard for the Han. Yuan rule was rough. They didn't value farming, ignored culture, and corruption was common. By the late Yuan, the Yellow River flooded, plagues spread, and relief grain was stolen by officials. People with no food joined the Red Turban rebels. The Yuan fell after only 98 years. Its problem was straightforward: a dynasty won by force, if it rules with the arrogance of a conqueror and doesn't govern fairly, will eventually be overthrown by the oppressed. 7. The Ming dynasty. Zhu Yuanzhang went from beggar to emperor and carved the lessons of past dynasties into his bones. Afraid of prime ministers having too much power, He abolished the position entirely, handling hundreds of reports himself each day. Fearful of Gongchen rebelling, he killed tens of thousands of them. Worried about officials forming factions, he created secret police to watch everyone. He held power too tightly. He could handle it, but later emperors didn't have his energy. The Wanli emperor didn't hold court for 30 years. Another emperor was obsessed with carpentry. Power naturally flowed to the cabinet and palace officials. Cabinet ministers split into factions, fighting each other. The palace official Wei Zhongxian even dared to call himself 9,000 years old, just below the emperor. The court became a mess. In the late Ming, a little ice age brought droughts and locusts. People had no harvest. Instead of helping, the government added taxes to pay for army supplies. Finally, Li Ziqing's peasant army entered Beijing, and the Chongzhen emperor hanged himself. The Ming lasted 276 years. The Ming's end teaches us that if power is too concentrated in the emperor, and the emperor neglects his duties, power becomes a tool for internal fights. Add disasters and heavy taxes and the dynasty will fall. 8. The Qing dynasty. As the last major unified dynasty, the Qing used the ruling skills of all previous dynasties to the extreme. They strictly limited the power of palace officials, even forbidding them to read, to prevent them from seizing power. They set up a grand council to replace the cabinet, letting the emperor control the government directly. Fearful of conflict between Manchus and Han, they used a dual system, bringing Han officials into the government. This created a long period of internal stability, nearly 200 years. But the Qing made a fatal mistake. To maintain stability, they closed the country to the outside world, leaving only one port open for trade. They called themselves the Superior Kingdom, isolated from the world. But the world had changed. Britain had its Industrial Revolution, with strong ships and guns. France had its revolution, with new systems replacing the old order. In 1840, the Opium War started. The Qing swords and spears were no match for British guns. They were forced to sign unequal treaties. Later, they lost badly to Japan, and 8-nation alliance troops entered Beijing. The Qing became a government for foreigners. In 1911, a shot in Wuchang led to its fall. The Qing lasted 268 years. The Qing's tragedy is the most meaningful for modern times. If a dynasty sticks to old ways, refuses to change, and can't keep up with the world, even the most stable rule will be washed away by the times. From Qin to King, we see that every dynasty's founder was busy fixing the last dynasty's problems. Qin fixed the problem of giving too much power to lords. Han fixed over-centralization. Tang fixed border defense. Qing fixed internal fights. But after fixing one problem, a new one always appeared: centralized power. And you lose the people's support. Give power away, and the regions become chaotic. Stick to old ways, and you get left behind by the times. These problems didn't appear overnight. Over time, land gradually became concentrated in the hands of a few landowners. Homeless people increased, officials became more corrupt, court politics became more chaotic, and social conflicts grew until a breaking point. It might be a natural disaster, a rebellion or a foreign war, and the dynasty would collapse. This cycle of accumulating problems usually takes about 200-300 years. It wasn't until the Qing fell that the Wuchang uprising brought not another patch for the old system, but a completely new system. So ancient dynasties couldn't last 300 years not because of fate, but because the old system had a vicious cycle, solving an old problem, just created a new one until eventually it couldn't hold on any longer.